And we are back to discuss more House of the Dragon with the trailer Q&A. This is something I used to do many years ago when I first started my channel because I would notice a lot of the same questions people kept asking in my comment section, and it was just easier to make a video than respond to every single one. With HBO releasing dueling trailers for both factions, naturally I'll be releasing 2 videos focusing on each specific faction and questions around them based off what we saw. Also, if you're a show-only fan who hasn't read the books, don't worry, I'll keep it as spoiler-free as possible for you, and before we get started, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, it helps out a lot. But for now, let's get into it. Okay, so the first question I keep seeing is, why is Aegon's banners a gold dragon? The answer is actually given in a footnote to chapter 15 of Fire and Blood, and I'll read that now. Initially, both claimants to the Iron Throne flew the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen, red on black, but by the end of 129 AC, both Aegon and Rhaenyra had introduced variations to distinguish their own supporters from their foes. The king changed the color of the dragon on his banners from red to gold to celebrate the brilliant golden scales of his dragon Sunfire, while the queen quartered the Targaryen arms with those of House Arryn and House Velaryon, in honor of her lady mother and her first husband respectively. So not only is it to represent him and his dragon Sunfire, but also to highlight who supported him or his sister. Keep in mind that if they use the same banner, it'd be mighty confusing, and crafty lords could fly the Targaryen banners and claim they supported one person when they really supported another, and switch back and forth depending on who was winning. This way it helps keep the situation clear across the realm, but of course the winning side would revert back to the normal Targaryen banners when the war was over. Also, keep in mind that if HBO continues doing the spin-offs, we will see other Targaryens across history have their own personalized banner with the dragon on it, but just in different colors. I'll touch more on this topic in the Team Black Q&A. And before anybody mentions it, yes, the book and show banners for the Greens are slightly different. In the books, the background was black, and here it's green, to which we can surmise that it's supposed to represent the Hightower influence and their call to war. Larys gives a great explanation on this during episode 5 of season 1, when Allison shows up in a green dress. I'm not gonna lie, I kinda like this change over the one in the books, and it just further helps illustrate the Hightower hold over the throne. Next question is, where's Alicent's other son, Daeron? For those of you who don't know, in the books, Alicent actually has 4 children, Aegon, Helaena, Aemond, and Daeron. At the time of the war, Daeron is actually serving as a cupbearer for the Hightower family in the Reach, far away from King's Landing. So where is Daeron? Will he show up? Well, in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, showrunner Ryan Condal actually answers this. I'll read that part of the article now. That remains to be seen. We will see, Condal says. Though Season 1 did not even allude to this character, Condal previously confirmed that Alicent's other son beyond Aegon and Aemond from the books does indeed exist on the show somewhere. Daeron is a fixture and a character in the show, he adds. Do not fret anybody, all in due time. So yeah, it's kind of weird that we may go 2 seasons without anyone ever alluding to this character, even as a potential threat, which Daemon does not do in the season 1 finale. That would be like going 2 seasons without ever acknowledging that Tommen exists in Game of Thrones, and then he shows up out of nowhere later on, like, oh yeah, Tommen, we totally weren't waiting to introduce him when he becomes important later on. No, he was always there in the background, you just didn't know about it. Yeah, that wouldn't fly in Game of Thrones, and it most likely won't fly here. But, according to Condal, it's possible, so who knows. Daeron does have his own dragon, and they do participate in the war, so it adds to the war powers that the Greens have, but it's very weird, especially if he does come in late Season 2 or Season 3, that everyone kind of forgets about him. Unless they're going to make it a meme, which I hope they do. Also, Alicent never once mentions him, in case you haven't noticed. And yes, the irony of Viserys saying how his whole family was there at that feast in the last season, it's not lost on me, but you can chalk it up to him losing his mind, or he's not fully aware that Daeron was missing. Or you can sum it up to Viserys being a neglectful father, which is what Aegon alludes to during episode 9. Take your pick. Next question is, what did you mean by Alicent getting more screen time? So in my Greens trailer breakdown, I mentioned how Alicent doesn't have a lot to do during the Civil War. This is true. She's kind of like Cersei in the fact that most of her scenes will be in King's Landing because where else is she supposed to go? She's not a dragon rider, she's not a fighter, other than counseling the king and the occasional footplay with Larys. There isn't anything she can do, but they need the actress around because 1, they're paying her a small fortune to appear in the show, she is one of the main characters, and 2, they need to fill out the runtime for each episode somehow. House of the Dragon was initially 4 seasons, but they're likely going to extend that to another season or 2 to pad out HBO's lineup since HBO doesn't seem to have a lot of shows that are surefire hits right now. Making television shows are expensive, and HBO needs to have that subscription driving programs to keep people coming back. Extending out the series is the logical conclusion here, and in order to do that, they need characters who would otherwise not have anything to have stuff to do. Whether or not these filler scenes will be any good is anybody's guess. Next up, what did you mean by the Greens having a moral compass? So, if they're gonna do team versus team dynamic, then we need to have reasons to support either side. The only people you see picking sides are book readers. Casual viewers who haven't read the books either side with Rhaenyra automatically, or they don't care. It's very clear that Ryan Condal is sticking to the books as best as he can, but it's also clear that he has skewed opinions towards the Black faction and is making them the good guys when there aren't supposed to be any good guys, just morally gray guys. Of course, you're gonna have to have your innocent characters on both sides, and this would be Helaena for the Greens. Daeron, who I mentioned earlier, would also fit the role for the Green faction, as his description in the book is him being more kind and gentle than his brothers. Helaena, on the other hand, was quirky and kinda weird, which is something a lot of people like, and everyone was wanting more of her during Season 1. But you can't have it be a team versus team dynamic and ask people to choose a side when you're making one side more sympathetic and the other side a bunch of assholes. At this point, it's just a heroes versus villains situation, and that is not Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones / House of the Dragon. Think about it. Aegon is an asshole, Aemond is a ridiculous anime villain, Otto is Diet Coke Tywin Lannister, Kristen Cole is a douche, and Alicent is just frustrating. You really do need someone in there to make it more balanced. The writers will tell you that the Black faction has their fair share of assholes, but no, they really don't. Last season, the writers were clueless and confused as to why Daemon was loved by the fandom so much, but it was just the Dany going crazy situation all over again. And, if you don't remember, Daenerys going crazy in the end of Game of Thrones and killing everyone was something nobody saw coming, except the people who have been directing Game of Thrones for years. According to the behind-the-scenes book, the writers were setting up Dany to be crazy since Season 4, but then somehow forgot to make that apparent to everybody else but themselves. If they want to drive the team versus team thing, they need to give us more sympathetic characters on the green side, otherwise they're just a bunch of cartoon villains. And finally, are we getting an Aemond versus Aegon situation? So the last season's penultimate episode set this whole thing up as Aemond wants to usurp his brother and take the throne. The last teaser trailer even set this up as Aemond eyeing the Iron Throne every chance he got, and well, yeah, they kind of are. I won't go into book spoilery details, but it's a lot less of him usurping his brother and more of him taking charge when he needs to do so. I wouldn't be surprised if the showrunners decided to make it more dramatic by inventing some storyline for Aemond to usurp Aegon, because he feels as though Aegon is a terrible military commander and will ruin their house. If anything, it definitely makes the trailers more interesting to do this, and sets up this whole Game of Thrones thing perfectly with people scheming against their own blood to take power, but we'll have to see. But guys, that is it for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments below, give the video a like, it helps out a lot, and consider subscribing for more Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon videos, or supporting the Patreon page for some exclusive content. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.